This is Ann Davis, and it is February of 2023, and I am honored to be here today with Harriel and Stanley Blair. And I know these two fine folks do not need an introduction, but just in case you don't know who they are or know much about them, they are extremely involved in this community. I don't know of any part of the community between the two of you haven't touched in some way or another. Such assets. And the first couple to ever be named Man of the Year and Woman of the Year at the same time, and this was in 2021. And I remember that night so well, and I remember the look on Harriel's face when she won that, and how excited I was. And I looked over and looked at you, Stanley, and you looked so proud. You were just beaming. And so that was such a special night. I think it was for just about everybody in that room. But anyway, we'll start out, and I'd like to find out where you all grew up. Ladies first. Harriel, okay. You want to take that?
Well, I grew up here in Athens. I went to, well, the story is, my mother's first cousin was a teacher, and she taught at Lanetown, the school that's there now, not the one that was before it, which was a Rosenwald school. And they were not only cousins, they were very best friends too. So she took me to school with her. So I went to school up there for 3 years, and then I came to Cook. And I went to Cook until it closed in 1966. Then I went to the junior high, and then McMinn, and graduated from McMinn, and graduated from Tennessee State University in Nashville. Went to UTC for graduate work, and went to UTK for postgraduate work. And so I was in college quite a while.
Well, I admire you for doing that, Harriel. And now, can you tell us just a little bit about your family?
My family, my mom was Jenny King Bayless, and my dad was Eddie Bayless. And we lived here in Athens, just a regular life. Family, most of my mom's siblings lived in the area, not always in Athens, but they lived in the area. So I was around my cousins a lot, and grew up with many friends, and just had a pretty normal, fun childhood.
I was blessed to have a lot of big family and cousins around all the time, and the family reunions I miss so much, because all of my family's scattered now, and you just don't have that like you used to.
No, you don't. Everybody's kind of gotten busy, and they've moved out of state, so it's kind of hard to get together sometimes.
Yeah, certainly is. Now, tell us about the family you and Stanley have created together. You've got, I know, a really special grandson, Carter. But tell us a little bit more about.
We have 2 children. Nick is the oldest. He finished at UTC, and then year before last, he finished his master's at UTK, and he's a banker in Knoxville, and has 3 daughters. And Megan lives in Franklin, Tennessee, and Carter is the oldest, her oldest, and then she has another son, and then we just recently had a little granddaughter that's a little over a month old, and so we have 6 grandchildren in all.
Just an adorable child. I enjoyed seeing the pictures. Now, tell us a little bit about your vocation, Harriel. I know you taught school.
Okay.
And my mother absolutely thought the sun just rose and set in you. She loved working with you.
Well, when I got out of college, I got a job at Mountain View in Etowah, and I taught there for 3.5 years, and then I got married. And I taught 2 years in Sweetwater, and then I got a job at Athens City, so I finished out my career of 38 years at Athens City. I taught at West Side, and then I taught at City Park, and I retired from teaching at City Park.
Tell me about the changes in education throughout all the time you taught. Harriel, I know they talk so much about teaching to the test now. Did you see a lot of...
Not when I first started. We had our curriculum, and we pretty much, taught the curriculum. And would have our in-services, especially when we got new books and things of what, the representatives would come in and help us learn the material and everything that we need to teach the children. And one thing that has changed, that changed for the better, is the number of students that you can have in a classroom. When I first started teaching, the minimum you would have would be 25 or 26. Mm-hmm. One year I got up to 30. And so they have a limit on class sizes now that they didn't have when I first started teaching.
I remember those big classrooms.
Mm-hmm.
That was a lot. And split grades. I never understood how one person could teach 2 grades, but...
I did that for 1 year. I had a split, no, I had it for 2 years. I had a split first and second, and 1 year I had a split second and third.
I just don't know how you could keep up with all your students and make sure they're getting everything they do, as I know you would be so determined to
Mm-hmm.
give them the best education you could. That would have been a real challenge, I would think. Well, we are really blessed here at the museum to have Harriel every Wednesday. And she works with Tom Biddle and Laura Lenore, and they have done a fantastic job of organizing our archives, our library. And because of you all, it's going to be so much easier for future generations to be able to find information that they're looking for. And I'm just so grateful for all the work you all have done. You've wrapped everything as possible in acid-free materials. Mm-hmm. You've stored them properly. And I think there's probably a little bit of excitement about a letter we got recently.
Yes.
Have you all discussed that?
Yes, we didn't even know it was in the building. We knew that we won the bid, but we didn't know it was physically in the building. So when we found out it was physically in the building, we had to go see it. And we're going to take a picture of it, so we'll have a copy in the library.
Certainly.
Mm-hmm. But the library is coming along. We're not where we would like to be, but it has improved a lot.
Oh,
and like you
tremendous.
said, we want people to come in and do research and be able to find what they're looking for, because we do have a lot of history about our county in there.
And the letter that we were referring to is an 1817 letter written by Joseph McMinn to Andrew Jackson. And it was a treasure, and we were able to raise enough private funds to be able to acquire that letter in auction. And it was an exciting time for us, wasn't it?
It was. What goes along with the Bible.
Absolutely,
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. Well, Stanley, I'll move over here to you for a few minutes and ask you. I know you did not grow up in Athens, so did you?
No, I grew up, was born and raised in Loudon, Tennessee, just a few miles up the highway. And that's where I was born, that's where I was raised until later on in life.
Could you tell us a little bit about your family and growing up there?
I'm the youngest of 8 siblings. So
Wow.
There were 8 of us, and I was the youngest. And it was Betty, Sue, Margie, Emma, Joyce, Bobby, Billy, and me.
Huh.
So those were my role models growing up, along with my parents.
Do they still live in this area?
Well, Betty died in '97. Sue died in '97.
Mm-hmm.
Margie died in 2014, and Billy died in 2014. Mm-hmm. So 4 of them are passed, and Emma lives in San Antonio, Texas. Bobby lives in Oakton, Virginia. Joyce, who spent about 40 years in Springfield, Massachusetts. She moved back to Loudon in 2008, so she lives in the old, we call it home place, and me. So there's 4 of us still left.
Well, that's wonderful, and I'm just glad you've got some, at least a little bit close by. So, well, Stanley, I want to talk about where you were educated, but I'm going to focus on that a little bit more because there's quite a few more stories I think there. But I do want to ask you about your life and what brought you to Athens and.
Okay. Well, as I said, born and raised in Loudon. I went to elementary school in Loudon. It was called a Rosenwald school. I went there 1st through 8th grade, and we were about 2.5 miles from the school. And the saying of you walk to school uphill and uphill home. We did that. So for 8 years, I walked to the school. It was a 2-room school. They had doors that divided us. So from 1st to 4th grade was a room, and the other side was 5th through 8th grade. So we had a teacher in each room. Wonderful education. We had a cafeteria in the basement, and it was just a different time, but we didn't know it at the time. But it was a different time. I know we did the things children do: play and have fun, and have plays at the school. The school was a place where everybody could come and fellowship and have events, and we had a lot of plays during our time at Dunbar. It was named after Paul Laurence Dunbar, the poet. So Dunbar was a fun place to be, and we had wonderful teachers.
Now, Stanley, after you finished your education in Loudon, where did you go from there?
Well, it's ironic. I walked right past Loudon High School on my way to Dunbar.
Dunbar.
But we couldn't go to Loudon High School because of segregation.
Mm-hmm.
So when we finished, we had a choice of going to, there was a black school in Sweetwater, High Point High School, and J.L. Cook here in Athens. So most of our siblings went to J.L. Cook. We had a brother, Bobby, went to High Point in Sweetwater, and a sister, Betty, because there was no way for her to come here because of transportation problems. So she went to Austin High School in Knoxville for 4 years. Stayed with a relative, and when she finished there, she went to Knoxville College for 4 years, and she was a pediatric nurse, and she moved after that to Brooklyn, New York, where she was a nurse for the rest of her life, at Kings County Hospital. So when I had to come to school at Cook, this is something that happened earlier. The Monroe County Board of Education, the McMinn County Board of Education, and the Loudon Board of Education somehow got together, and they provided a bus to transport us from Loudon to either Sweetwater, High Point, or to J.L. Cook here in Athens. So it would stop in Sweetwater for those who wanted to go there, let them off, come on down to Athens, and same thing coming back, stop in Sweetwater, pick them up, take them back to Loudon. So we left early in the morning. It was dark when we left, and time we made the stops going back, it was almost dark when we got back home. So that was that part of the schooling that I went to, the elementary and the high school.
Okay, and then after high school?
After high school, I didn't really do anything. And then later, a year later, in '67, I graduated from Loudon. I did graduate from Loudon High School, though. I went here 2 years. They integrated schools in Loudon before they did here. So I went my freshman and sophomore year to Cook High School, and my junior and senior year to Loudon, and graduated from there. So in '67, I joined the Armed Air Force. So I spent 4 wonderful years there. Spent a year and a half on Cape Cod in Massachusetts, and 2.5 years right outside of Tokyo in Japan. So I really enjoyed my time in the Air Force. I came back home in '71, July '71. I had to find a job, and I was hired at TVA in Knoxville. So I worked there from '72 until '88. I was living in Loudon. We got married in '78, and they decided to move our whole department to Chattanooga. And that's how I ended up in Athens. I didn't move to Chattanooga, but she was teaching here in Athens, so she wouldn't have to drive to Athens every day from Loudon. And it made it better, for her, because she liked to stay after school. She didn't have to worry about driving, all the way back to Loudon. And so I spent the rest of my career at TVA in Chattanooga. So a total of 35 years at TVA.
That was a very good career, I'm sure.
It was,
Yeah,
and
rewarding.
I hear people say, my wife reminds me of it. She says, they live in Chattanooga, they drive down to Chattanooga. She said, well, Stanley, you drove to Chattanooga for 18 years. but anyway, it was fine.
Yeah.
I enjoyed, the work at TVA and the Air Force. I played a lot of softball in the Air Force, and it was strange. When I got to Japan, we were a new squadron, just formed. So we didn't have anything to do but play softball, and I played softball quite a bit.
Well, I bet you got pretty good at it too, didn't
Very
you?
good, very good. But I enjoyed it.
Tell me how you met Harriel.
Well, one Sunday afternoon in 1976, right?
Mm-hmm.
I had a friend when I went to cook, and he had a sister, and I knew her, and we were good friends. And my brother worked at Davidson Textron here.
Westinghouse.
Westinghouse. And she said, I'm bringing a friend of mine up to meet your brother. And so I didn't think no more about it. So one Sunday afternoon, they come knocking on the door, and I met her, and I guess love at first sight. So we dated for a couple of years, and we married in '78. And we moved here to Athens in November of '88.
Now, what happened to your brother, Stanley, who was supposed to meet Harriel? Did he ever get introduced to her?
No. My brother worked with my friend's sister, and she just told him that I'm going to bring a friend of mine up to meet your brro, meet me.
Meet you,
To meet
okay.
me.
His
I
brother
misunderstood
was married.
that.
Oh,
okay, so he wasn't upset about that.
No. So that's how we met.
I misunderstood
and,
what you said. Well, I tell you what, you all have had a wonderful marriage and set such a fine example for people throughout the years. And well, I'd like to talk to both of you all at the same time, if you don't mind, about Rosenwald schools. I know Harriel's done a lot of research, she and Ann Boyd, and you lived, you were actually a part of that and attended a Rosenwald school. Could you just explain who Joseph Julius Rosenwald was, and for the public so they will know?
She can correct me on any mistakes I made, but Julius Rosenwald was the founder and CEO of Sears, Roebuck and Company, when it used to be called Sears, Roebuck and Company. And he and Booker T. Washington collaborated to build schools in the South for black kids that did not have schools. And that's how the Rosenwald schools were built. They were all built on the same principle. They wanted light to come into the school, so the school that I went to, we're in the process of restoring it. It looks really, really good. And we had, the windows were just awful. The man named Robert Worth, do you know him?
I do.
He came up and we took all the windows out, put them in my truck, brought them to Athens, and he refinished all of them. And they look really, really good. So Harriel might want to say some more about Rosenwald and Booker T. Washington, their relationship.
Julius Rosenwald, he was a very, I guess, private man. He did not put his name on buildings and things. They have a museum named for him now in Chicago. So even though he was like maybe the brains behind Sears, his name was not put on the company. And he and Booker T. Washington, like Stanley said, became friends. And Booker T. Washington talked to him about the need for educating black children in the South, because back then some churches had schools, like the Athens Academy here in Athens was the Presbyterian church. And so that's how children got their education. And so he talked to him about investing in building schools, and he gave what they like to call the seed money to help get the school started. But the agreement was with the community. The community would raise money. Someone in the community might donate the land to build the school. The Board of Education of that county or city would have to agree to take over after the school was built to provide the education for the children. So that's pretty much how it got started and how it continued for so many years.
The one in Loudon was built in 1923, and it closed in 1965.
Okay. So now Stanley, in the line of Rosenwald schools, was Loudon one of the earlier ones built, or do you know?
It was built in 23. I think there were schools built before that.
The first school in Langtown, I think, was built before that, and then it burned, and then there was a school that replaced it that's there now. Cook was built in 1926, and it depended on the size of the community, is the size of the school that you had. Cook started it with 6 classrooms, and it went grades 1 through 9, and then each year it added a grade till it got to the 12th grade. And Cook also had a shop that was Rosenwald. Rosenwald, they built schools, shops like for technical skills, and they also built homes for teachers to live in.
Oh, I didn't know that. That's interesting. Now, most of the original Rosenwald schools were built on the same plan, weren't they? Architecturally speaking.
Most of them.
Most of them with, what, 2 rooms?
2 rooms.
Was it? Okay.
2 rooms. And we had a library in the front. That's where the big windows were. And the 2 rooms, one on the left, one on the right. That coat room and a closet. And in 1953, the Rosenwald School in Loudon, Dunbar, they added bathrooms on the back side of the school. This was something we worried about because it's on the National Historical Register. We have a marker there in front of the school, and they said that wouldn't affect that at all. So we're
good. You got to keep that designation.
Yeah.
Cook was brick. Now all the schools weren't wood, and it depended on, some of the schools were very large. It depended on the size of the community. So up in Langtown, it was a 1-room school because it was a small community. Over in Etowah, East Etowah, it was a 2-room school. So depending on the population, it would be the size of the school. Some of them were very large, and some of them were brick.
Now, Harriel, the one in Langtown burned, didn't it?
The first one burned, yes.
And did they replace it on the same site?
They replaced it. Mrs. McDermott, who we interviewed, said the original school was closer to the road, and when it burned, they built another one like behind it, so it was farther away from the road. But the one that's there now is like the one that burned. And it was built, I think, 1937.
Stanley, tell me about your memories of being educated in a Rosenwald school, Dunbar School. I know that he funded the building per se, but your education, you touched a little bit on that earlier. Is there anything specifically that stands out that you learned and when you were in grammar school?
Well,
School?
you had to behave because the teachers were more than teachers in our community. They were your friends, they were your parents' friends, and if something happened at school, your parents would know about it probably almost as soon as you got home. So they took care of us and our parents. You couldn't say anything bad about your teachers, which is unlike today. So we knew that if we didn't do what we were supposed to do in school, that we could have consequences when we got home. We had friends, a lot of friends. Were in the school. We knew everybody that was in the school, and the education was very good. They were very, very good teachers. And I marvel at the way that they were able to teach 4 grades in one room all day, 1st through 4th, and then 5th through 8th. But they did. They did it. You had your history, you had English, you had math, you had science, you had all of these things, and they got through them every day. So it was a wonderful experience. It was a wonderful experience, but you didn't know that things were not the way they should be. You know what I mean? Yeah. That there were schools in Loudon that we received their books after they finished with them, because we would see their names written in the books, and we didn't get new books. We got secondhand books. So, but that was a different time. But that's the way things were then. I enjoyed my experience at Dunbar. I enjoyed my experience at Cook High School, although it was a long ride every day.
Oh, I can imagine, Stanley.
But it was a long ride. And the other thing I played baseball at Cook. We had a baseball team. Didn't always have one, but my sophomore year we had a baseball team. So you had to practice after school, and then when you had games, there'd be games here maybe and away. You had to get on a bus. I'd go down to the old bus station and catch it was called the Tennessee Coach. It was before Trailways.
Mm-hmm.
And so you sit there, and you had to sit in the back of the bus station. You couldn't sit up front and wait for the bus. The bus came, and it was dark when you got home, and you had to walk another 2 miles to get home. And usually when we had away games, I would stay with a friend that was on the team, because there was no way to get back home that time of night.
Stanley, I think some of the hardships and things that you all had to face and overcome, I just admire you deeply. Is there any, when you were in high school, is there anything that stands out that made it even harder for you to attend school besides the travel and everything?
You talking about Cook?
Mm-hmm.
No, I enjoyed every day at Cook. It was just part of education, of going to school. It was, had great teachers at Cook. I did what I was supposed to do, and then when I found out I was going to be going to Loudon, there's a lot of some apprehension about what's that going to be like. But, and it was like we had always gone to Loudon High School. When we walked in there the first day on a September morning, it was like we'd always gone there. There was no problems, nothing.
Wonderful.
It was like, you know, it could have been like this all the time. Because the teachers, I had great teachers at Cook. I had great teachers at Loudon High School. I had friends at Loudon High School, just like I did at Cook. So it was all part of the education process. It's just I went about it a different way. I had to go a little further, you know, but it was fine.
Well, I tell you, the traveling you all had to do, it's just amazing. Harold, you did you?
No, I was going to add to Stanley's story. Stanley's two older sisters, they stayed in dormitories. Cook, Professor Nash, bought two of the Oak Ridge houses and moved them down here, and one was for girls and one was for boys.
Oh.
And Stanley's sister, Margie and Sue Ann, they stayed down here during the week. And I just can't imagine sending, you know, my 13, 14-year-old daughters away from home for the week, but they stayed all week and then went home on the weekends. And one of the teachers was like their dorm mom. And then for the boys, and I read this, that one of the custodians and his wife were the dorm parents for the boys. And a lot of people, that's how they got their education, because they didn't have schools in their community. So they would have to come to Athens, Madisonville, Sweetwater, before they had a school, came to Athens. People in Meigs County, earlier years went to Booker T. Washington in Chattanooga, and then eventually they came over to McMinn County. People that lived in Charleston would come up to Cook. So it was I guess kind of like a regional school that brought in people from surrounding counties. But that was his older sister's experience, you know. But as I said, I just can't imagine when my children were, you know, 12 and 13 years old, sending them away to school.
I can't either. That's just.
But they would go on Sunday afternoon. They would go in Loudon and catch a bus to Athens and stay all week in the dormitories and go to school, and then come home on Friday and be at home in Loudon, you know, the weekend. But they did this. Margie and Sue did it for 4 years. Our other sister, Emma, when she was going to high school, she had to do that for 1 year. That's when the three boards got together and provided a bus. So Emma only had to do it for 1 year, what Margie and Sue did for 4 years. But so, you know, and it started out with Betty, who had to go to Austin High School in Knoxville, and it started getting a little better and a little better. You know, the buses were provided to come here, but still it wasn't right.
Yeah.
But, you know, it wasn't as bad as Betty. But then when it got down to me, it was, I went to the same school where I lived. But that didn't make it right, but it was still better than Betty, what she had to go through.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
It does. It does.
We were talking about when we were growing up. I lived in the neighborhood where Forest Hills was, and we talked about how we went to separate schools, but after school we played together. White children and black children, we played together, but when it came to going to school, we went to separate schools.
Well, that's just like me. The neighborhood I lived in, there were some white people in the neighborhood, and they had a bus that picked them up and took them to their elementary or grammar schools. But we had to walk. We didn't have a car, there was one man's family in the neighborhood. They had a car, and occasionally he would drive, pick us up, and we wouldn't have to walk that 2 miles. But 90% of the time we walked. But the white kids had a bus that picked them up, and that's the way it was then.
Oh, just I'd give anything in the world if we could go back and erase just the wrongs and make them right. But that's part of history.
Yeah,
but
that's
you
part
all,
of history.
It's part of
history.
You all are such wonderful examples of people who, you overcame quite a bit to make a life that is exemplary to everyone in our community. And I admire that so very, very much in both of you. Is there anything that stands out in your mind about education or family life that we haven't covered that you can think of?
I'm just going to think about, as I said, we had a pretty good life. A friend of mine, Gloria, we used to ride our bikes, and that's when you could ride your bikes all over Athens.
Mm-hmm.
And we'd ride to the Zesto, and, nobody bothered you. But you remember Hugh's Cafeteria?
I do.
Well, we couldn't go in the front. So we would have to go, they had a side door. So we would have to go place our order at the side door. And then they'd hand it out to us. When we go to the movies at the Strand, they had a side door. And we had to go through the side door and go up in the balcony to watch the movies. And Miss Melba Wilson, she was there at the side door, and she would take our money when we paid. And if we wanted to buy refreshments, we couldn't go to the concession area. We'd give her our order, and she would go order it for us. And so it was just things like that. But I don't remember, and I've watched so much history and read so much history about other places and how segregation and integration went there. I don't remember not being able to go shopping and try your dress on or your shoes on. I don't remember that, but I have seen that in other places where black people couldn't try on anything before they, while they were shopping. But I don't think that happened in Athens. I did not experience it, I put it that way. And we just, you just kind of knew what you could and couldn't do because your parents would talk to you. I remember the separate water fountains. I never drank out either one because I thought they were dirty. But I remember Riddle and Wallace. They were a little more friendlier. We could go in and sit down at the counter while we ordered our whatever we ordered, ice cream or whatever, and get it. We didn't stay there, but they didn't mind us sitting waiting on our order, where some places you had to stand to get your order. You couldn't sit down. Woolworths, and the story of Woolworths and the sit-ins trying to integrate their counters. You could go in there and shop, but you couldn't go over there and eat. At Woolworths, I don't even think you could order and take it with you. I don't remember doing anything like that.
Oh, I just I don't know. I could ask you all questions all day long, but I don't want you to share anything you're not comfortable sharing. And it's just a time that it's hard to fathom when you look back, but you all lived through so much of it. I think we were fortunate here in McMinn County in the fact that we had leaders who stepped forward and helped with that process of integration from what I've read and heard through the years. And it went very well from what I understand. You all may have other memories of that, but I think we had the black and the white leaders in the community met and worked out a process from what I understand.
I asked Mr. Burkett that when we were
Did
talking
you?
to
Okay.
him, and he said that they did come together, and he named the people, but I can't remember them. that came together and wanted to make sure that it was a smooth transition. Ann Boyd and I talk about this. Ann went to Matman Central. It was brand new. I went to the junior high, which is a middle school now, which was brand new. And we didn't have those problems because everybody was coming to the new school. And I laugh and I said, well, the school was round and you could get lost trying to find your class. I said, so you didn't really have time to argue with anybody. You was trying to make sure you got to the class on time. But I had friends that came to Macmillan High, and they did experience a lot of unpleasantness.
Did they?
Because I think it's because they were coming to Macmillan, and it was like they were going to the white people's school. Some of them felt that way, and they did. I talked to some of my friends, and they did have unpleasant experiences. Same thing, I talked to some of my friends that went to Forest Hills. They were younger than me, and so I asked them, I said, well, the younger students, how were you all accepted? And they said, at first we were not. And I do think going to those schools, that there was more problems. But by the ones that were going to the brand new schools, it was new for everybody.
Yeah, that's a good point. I'm sure that would. Harriel, tell me, if you were teaching today, how would you, of course, everyone knows we're getting this huge, big, new school complex that combines all 4 grammar schools. How do you see that? Do you see that changing education in any way or in any form that would be? I don't mean detrimental, but just different than the way things are done in these individual schools. We've had neighborhood schools here for ever, and now we're going to this big new school, and I just wonder what your feelings are as a former teacher.
Well, I do miss, the neighborhood schools and everything, but I do understand that our schools were getting very old, and they were saying it was just going to cost so much money to keep fixing those schools, and I'm hoping that the new school, they'll be able to concentrate those funds in one school, well, really 2, because it's the primary and the intermediate, and technology. When I taught at City Park, we would often laugh that a man designed that school and he put 1 outlet in each wall. We had 4 outlets. And then technology came and we had extension cords running everywhere to run the technology. So hopefully that will be taken care of in these new schools. And they were just, the schools were just getting older, and as we look around, a lot of counties around us were building new schools. And your schools, your education system is what attracts business. So I'm proud that they're doing that, and we're going to get to go back and tour City Park before it closes.
Oh, good.
So I'm glad to be able to do that because it's going to be torn down.
Yeah.
And so that's going to be a change, but life is change.
It certainly is. And I can relate so much to what you're saying because this building, as of course you all know, was part of the old McMinn County High School. And when we started using these different rooms, and especially this big room we're in now, which was the cafeteria, there was 2, maybe 3 outlets in this whole huge room here. And we have spent many years of constantly rewiring to update and upgrade to meet the demands of life today.
Yeah, that's the way we were. We just, the computer specialists that would come in, and of course we'd have those little boxes on the wall where they would add extra outlets and things, and because I said we had those big extension cords, and we had a lot of technology that the schools just weren't built to handle.
Exactly. Yeah. Well, have either of you have any final thoughts that you
I
can
just want to
share?
say, Stanley had mentioned about the education.
Yes.
And we received a good education at Cook Elementary. I didn't go to high school. And we did have one class, no, we had two classes, where we had two grades. Miss Prigmore's room, she taught fourth and fifth. And fourth grade was on one side of the room, and the fifth grade was closer to the door because I guess we would be the ones leaving first to go to sixth grade. And she taught, when she was teaching fourth grade, we would have like seat work to be doing or reading or research to be doing while and then some classes she taught together. Social studies, when we did current events, we would like do that together. But the core subjects, English and math and reading, would be separate. And so we had a library. We got to go to the library, and also we had Bible. And I don't know if you remember Miss Galloway.
Oh, yes, very well.
And I just remember Miss Galloway would come, and she had the prettiest felt pictures, biblical pictures.
I remember those,
You remember
Harriel.
those?
I sure do.
They were just gorgeous, and she would tell us Bible stories, and we enjoyed it. Of course, now you can't teach
No.
Bible in school, but I just think about, and that's what I remember. I said, I don't know when she retired, what happened to her beautiful felt pictures, but they were just beautiful. Miss Ray came and taught us music.
Yes.
And so in the high school, Miss Wright taught high school Bible. And we just, the teachers would come. The city had teachers that would come to the school and teach us. We had, and I don't know what the program was, but in the elementary school, a lady would come and bring books for us to check out. And I can't remember her name, and I can't remember what the program was at that time, but she would come, and I don't remember how often she came, maybe once a month or every 2 weeks or something, I'm not sure. And then we could check out books to read, take home and read, and then she'd come back and we'd check them back in and then check out some other books. And as Stanley said, we had plays. We had May Day, where we would have the school in Etowah, West Etowah. They would come over and have May Day. And then when we got in the 7th and 8th grade, we got to go over to there and participate in their May Day.
Oh.
So we had field trips. And one thing I think that I guess still kind of bothered me is after all these years was Camp Utananochi. Mm-hmm. The first time I ever got to go to the camp, it was a Mr. Versa's class. And we got to go for one day. We couldn't go and spend the night like they do, like the campers could do. Mm-hmm. And one thing I remember was the forest ranger bore a hole into the tree and brought out the rings and showed us the age of the tree. I never will forget that. And that's, and then when my children came along, they could go to camp. When they got in 4th grade, I think they started going to camp and have those experiences. And as I think about it as an adult, our parents also paid taxes that supported the school systems. Mm-hmm. But we never got to have that camping experience. And I just thought, even if we went at a different time,
absolutely,
why couldn't we have not had that camping experience? But our children got to have that camping experience. And then when I retired, I volunteered and went over with 2nd grade over there a few times to the camp. And it's a beautiful camp. Mm-hmm. It's a beautiful camp. But I just always thought, we missed out on experiences that the other schools had, which was really unfair because, like I said, our families had to pay the property taxes and stuff just like everybody else. And but I remember in Mr. Versa's class, he took us on field trips. And one of the field trips I remember, he took us to Oak Ridge. And you remember the ball, and you put your hand on your hair and went, whee! Yeah. I remember that. We didn't get, I don't remember going on many field trips, but I do remember those that he did for our class.
There was one other thing, and Harriel can help me with this. I don't think I mentioned it, I'm not sure. But my the next to oldest sister, Margie and Sue, our parents did something. They were different ages, but our parents did something that allowed Margie and Sue to be in the same grade when they went to high school here at Cook. Did she hold? Did she?
I wonder if she held Margie back.
I don't know if she held Margie back or had them to push Sue 2 grades. Sue was real smart, and she ended up being the valedictorian here at Jail Cook.
Huh.
But they did that so Margie and Sue could be in the same class when they went to high school. So I thought that
they
was.
held Margie back. I don't know.
I'm not sure
'Cause
how
Margie
it
was
worked,
older.
but they ended up. They were 2 years apart, but they were in the same class
Same class. Huh.
in high school.
But when you look back on it, and things weren't fair. I mean,
Absolutely.
things weren't
Yeah.
fair. But then you look back and you thank your parents and the teachers you had and the community, because Cook was kind of like Dunbar was the community.
Right.
So they'd have programs there, so when I look back on it, I had fun, I enjoyed it, and we were loved, we were cared for, and things have changed, and some things for the better, and some things you wonder, but we had a good life. I think I had a good childhood and learned a lot. We couldn't travel a lot because we couldn't stay in hotels.
Right.
And but I had an uncle that lived in Michigan. Got to go see him, and I had an aunt that lived in Atlanta, and we would get to go see her. So you pretty much went to visit friends where friends and relatives lived. And the first time I got to stay in a hotel, I'll never forget this. I was in the band here at McMinn, and our football team had a pretty good football team that year, and we got to go to the state. Of course, we got beat really bad. But the band got to go, and we got to stay in a motel. And so that was a new experience.
Oh.
Mm-hmm.
Something that you obviously remember.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So we had a good time, high school students.
Uh-huh.
And we got to play. The band got to play on the field and everything. But that was my first experience of staying in a motel. Or hotel. I think it was a motel then. It was a motel.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Sandy, do you have any experiences like that you remember staying in your first motel stay? Or?
No, I don't. But
well, you were in the Air Force, so that was
yeah, that was a wonderful experience.
Yeah.
4 years.
Everything was
Yeah.
pretty.
Yeah.
Well, I just appreciate both of you all so much, and in many ways, as I said, and I thank you for giving us your time today and coming and talking to us and sharing part of your lives with us.
Good.
And thank you for sharing your life with this community, with this museum, with your churches, with everything you all touch on a daily basis. We're so grateful to have you in our community.
Thank you.
Thank you.